Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Srimad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now I'm hot. You open the door. You open the door anytime. Huh?
You just walk.
No, I'm just kidding. Maybe this door, because there's a conversation. All right. Hare Krishna. You want to get in on it? You can get in on it too.
4 people. One door open, one door closed.
We do have air conditioning in here, you know. It really gets warm. All right, let us proceed. Okay. Okay, text 4, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 15th day of July, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this is a very auspicious day. It is the disappearance day of Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who founded the famous Radha Raman temple. So maybe we'll read a little about him. Okay. All right, so we're in text 4 of chapter 6 called Dhyāna-yoga on page 260. Okay. Yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadocyate yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadocyate yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadocyate yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadocyate yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadocyate. Anyone online?
Yada hi nendriyateshu na karma svanusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi
yogarudhastadocyate. Okay. Yada, when, he, certainly, na, not, indriya arteshu, in sense gratification, na, never, karmasu, in fruitive activities, anushajjate, one necessarily engages, sarva sankalpa, of all material desires, sannyasi, renouncer, yoga arudhaha, elevated in yoga, tada, at that time, uchyate, is said to be. Translation. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Purport. When a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification, since one cannot live without engagement. Without Krishna consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Krishna-conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, Krishna is continuing to describe the process of being elevated in the eightfold yoga system. And as in any yoga system, it's meant to progressively detach one from material sense gratification. Because that desire for material sense gratification is the binding force in this world. You may have so many different ideas and skills and whatever, but if you have that underlying desire to gratify your own senses in so many ways, then that'll bring you back again to this a material embodiment. And who knows what will happen after that? You never know. So this is he's describing one who's indriya arteshu, na karmasu, renounced all material desires. And he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Now, we may sometimes think that fruitive activities and acting for sense gratification are the same thing, but fruitive activities, if you think about it, means generally desiring the fruit of money or wealth by which you can buy sense gratification. You see what I'm saying? That's why dharma, artha, kama, moksha. The dharma is engaged in the material consciousness in order to be able to get some wealth, in order to be able to enjoy kama. You see, there's that. And then when you finally realize that this is not working and that you're going to get birth again, you try to get moksha. But that's also a material desire, ultimately, to be relieved of all the pains, like that. Now, I keep bringing this up, but it's an important point that the desire to be free of the pains of birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries is good at the beginning. In other words, it gives us the impetus to try to become realized, you see. There may be genuine desire for liberation. That's good, because otherwise you're completely enwrapped in the intricacies of material pleasure and trying to get free of material pain, which is, those two things are completely take over your consciousness. So understand, so you're not going to be eager to get liberation unless you believe in transmigration of the soul. So that's why that's always the first lesson. You're not the body, you're spirit, soul, and you've been through so many millions of other births which you've forgotten by Krishna's grace. And now, having the human form of life, tato brahma jigyasa, you should inquire into the absolute truth, into Brahman. Where does everything come from? Who am I? What is the real platform of enjoyment, and so forth. So that's the point here. But Krishna is giving the basic principles of the yoga, yoga rudha. One who is elevated in yoga, he's describing that. And ultimately it will come down to the elevation in yoga is elevation in bhakti yoga. Especially in this age, it's very difficult to advance in this yoga, this kind of yoga. And if you are able to come a little advanced, then you'll generally try to use it for a material thing. The prapti siddhi and the be able to read minds, that's very exciting. And all kinds of things. It's very tempting. But that's why, what does it say? Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakaliya shanta. Krishna bhakta nishkama ata eva shanta. That these different categories of persons, which more or less takes in almost everybody, bhukti kamis means the ordinary person who wants sense gratification. Then mukti kami are those who want liberation, and the siddhi kamis are the yogis who can develop these powers. Now the thing is, you may not have that as a motive when you first start practicing yoga. But if you begin to get some powers, you can start to read some minds, you'll think, well, this is pretty cool. Maybe I can, So it's very tempting. Without that powerful force of purification that comes from serving Krishna, chanting the holy name, and so forth, it's very dangerous to get into these kind of disciplines, by which you can become so powerful. We see so many examples in the Shastra. There's Vasa Muni, there's Saubhari Muni, there's so many others who are great yogis, but they're not great devotees, and they run into so much trouble because of their yogic power. Huh?
Chakra.
Yeah, the chakra comes. Oh, Mahima has a question, otherwise she wouldn't do that austerity of getting the, what is it? Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So would you say the yogic powers are also Maya's play to test us and see if we are really true devotees, or we were just doing bhakti to get the yogic powers and then get distracted by the powers?
Yes, there can be, a subtle or not so subtle conditioning, because it's like anything else, In other words, it can be used in Krishna service, and but generally, without the proper association, you become proud, like Durvasa Muni, and then you become envious. Why is this Ambarish getting so much honor? He's just an ordinary king. So it's not like I'm going to go and chastise him or anything. I'm going to go kill him. I'll just invoke this. I'll show him. I'll invoke the Kritya. Boom, and it was happening, but he was protected. So it's dangerous. It's unnecessary, and we saw by experience, that yogis who come to America. I was under the overall tutelage of the Satchidananda Swami, who had a real thing going there with the Integral Yoga Institute, Integral Yoga practice. It was good. You could get healthy. I remember I had a booklet he handed out for him with photographs of the different asanas and everything, But it's much too easy to become, if you don't have the protection, of Krishna, who makes you completely detached and even, you feel it's abhorrent, like that. Yadavadi Mamacheta Krishna Pada Aravinde, Yamunacharya. It's not just that he was detached from sex life. It's just like, oh, what was I thinking? What was I doing? I was like, are you kidding me? Whereas on the other side, Satchidananda, he fell down. All this money, all the disciples, all this stuff like that. So there's that danger. Bhukti Mukti Siddhikan. Sakali Ashanta. Why are they always not peaceful? Because they're not situated in the last verse of the previous chapter. Understanding Bhoktaram Yankitapasang Sarvalok Maheswaram. Realizing that Krishna is the Lord of everything. He's the real enjoyer. And he's my best friend, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. So then you can have peace, in serving. But if you don't have that faith and you don't have that taste, really, that ruchi, it's very dangerous to get these siddhis. Not recommended. All right. So this next verse is famous. Udhare Atman Atmanam Natmanam Avasariyet Atmaiva Atmano Bundhur Atmaiva Riparatmanaha. Well, a lot of Atmans in that verse. Looks like 6. And because Krishna is talking about how let's read the translation. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So the Atma means mind and soul in this verse that's used in it. Purport. The word Atma denotes body, mind, and soul, depending upon different circumstances or contexts. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important. Since the mind is the the central point of yoga practice, Atma refers here to the mind. Also the conditioned soul, as mentioned. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nescience. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved.
One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. The word he is used for emphasizing this point. That is, that one must do this. It is also said, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho bandhaya vishaya sango muktya nirvishayam manaha. For man, mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and mind detached from sense objects is the cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad. Therefore, the mind which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness is the cause of supreme liberation. And this is the difference between generally the Ashtanga yogis or the other kinds of yogis, Jnana yogis, and the Bhakti yogis. Because here, as you say, this verse, the mind absorbed in sense of Vishaya Sangha, right? And attachment to Vishaya, that's poison for the mind. That means bondage. Muktya nirvashayam manaha. But it doesn't say that. The next line might say, but that mind attached to Krishna is the cause of liberation. No, and that which is free of such attachment. But how to get that? Didn't we learn in chapter 2? Vishayavani vartande nidahara siddehina rasa vajam masopyasya param dristvana vartate. It's right there. Vishaya, as you know, means, right, the object of the senses. What's the similar word that kind of is so? Visha is poison. So vishayavani vartante nidahara siddehina. What this means, if you don't consume them, ahar means to eat. So in one sense, every sense has its sense object, and you consume it. Nice music, some beautiful thing, certainly food, obviously, fragrances, there's a consumption there. So if you stop consuming it, right? Cigarettes, right? I need a cigarette, but I know it's bad for me, so I'm not going to consume it, So if you go on there, keep doing that, you can come to the point where it says it turns away from you. In other words, you can decrease your addiction to it by not consuming it, for some time, by sheer will. But there's still some propensity for it. Especially, it's obvious with people who are into alcohol, drinking, is that, even though you may be on the wagon for so many years or so forth. I attended a meeting of the AA, I told you. And I was listening to some of the people say, my name is Jason, and I'm an alcoholic. But you see, I've got my little badge here. I've been free for 6 months. I've been clean for 6 months. Very good, Jason. Hare Krishna. They don't say Hare Krishna, but So as I told you, we had a fellow who became interested down here because a devotee. I told you the story. He's a very prominent devotee in Alatra. He's actually initiating Guru now. He's a long time. He's from England, but he has a farm there for many years in Alatra. But he also goes out and does books. He's very determined. And so he had a couple of kids, and one of them grew up in the Gurukul, and he got into alcohol. So, but he was a devotee, and so he sent him here to get some association. He thought I could help him. And so I did the best I could. He would attend the programs. But he really needed the AA. Was it AA? Yeah, AAA is the car thing. Okay, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. So he found one right up the street on Cass Street in one of those churches. They have it. And so he met someone there who he was talking about with the Krishna consciousness, and he invited him down here, and he became somewhat attracted. Forget his name now. And he would like to hear me give class. He would sit there, but because he had been a coke addict for so long, he was restless. The mind was, so he couldn't sit. He would go and walk around the patio and come down and sit. It's tough. So anyway, at one point, the devotee asked me to come up and give a talk up there because there was various similarities. One of the things, they recognize a higher power. They try to be completely non-sectarian, so even you can be whatever religion you are, but there's a higher power, And the strength that comes from association, from fellowship, they would call it, which is certainly part of our thing. So I gave a little talk there, but I was noticing that everyone who gave a talk, they would always say, like I said, my name is Jane, and I'm an alcoholic, but I'm clean now for the last 6 weeks, you see? So I was thinking, well, if I give a talk, do I have to say like that, Because I have to confess, when I was 18, as soon as I turned 18, I started to go to some parties and I would drink beer, But I had a very good fortune, although it didn't seem so good at the time. I would always get sick. I would throw up, So where's the fun in that? Anyway, so I said, okay, I'll give a talk, But I'm not going to go in there and say, my name is Dravida Dasa, and I'm an alcoholic, and I've been clean for 47 years. What kind of alcoholic are you? But that the same principle kind of holds, is that if you can, by the strength of fellowship and good association and counseling and so forth, and of course you want to do it because you realize the bad effects, it's ruining my life, ruining my marriage, whatever it is. So there's all these inducements to do that. But as we learn in the fifth canto, the fifth canto, of course, ends with a graphic description of hell, hellish punishments. It's really hair-raising, And you come, if you read that whole chapter, you say, boy, I want to do everything I can to avoid that, So the next chapter, the first chapter of the sixth canto, is all about Ajamil and the power of the holy name. And the whole idea is that you get hellish punishments by performing sinful activity, even though you know better. You're forced to do it. You feel that the impetus of sense gratification becomes so powerful it overwhelms your intelligence. That means the mind, full of these ideas to enjoy, overwhelms the good sense not to do it because you know the reaction. So there's several verses in there. I forget the exact Sanskrit, but the idea is that there's this analogy of the elephant bathing. Elephant, he hangs around in the forest. He gets all dusty, so he goes into the river or the lake in order to bathe, and he's got the built-in shower thing, So gets a very nice bath, but then how's he going to dry off? Where's the towel? Where's the gamsha? There's no. So he rolls around in the dirt, to get dry. So similarly, someone who is trying by his own will to kick a habit which he knows is self-destructive. That's the idea, and which will lead him to hell. I don't want to do that. So he may, by good association and understanding, refrain from the activity, you see. But the taste still remains. And so after the austerity and after the, good association with the AA thing, I really feel good now. But still, there's that, and the other point is that the rest of your life, if you're leading a life that, may be tenuous and you want some relief, it's so much anxiety, you don't have the holy name, you don't have the temple to go to, And so you say, well, I'll just take one drink, it'll just calm me down. So anyway, the whole thing is the mind. That's the point here. One has to elevate himself by the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the best friend and also the worst enemy. This is a famous verse. So the training is so important. To train the mind to think of Krishna, and to give up thoughts and temptations. That's a very important aspect here. Okay. So this theme continues. Bandharatmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrudve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. Again, a lot of atmas, like 4, 5 atmas. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Purport. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. So this brings up the importance of prayer. Because what is prayer? It's a vocalization of a desire to get to a different state. Whether you're praying like somebody like prayers to the holy name, and pray to the holy name to please give me more taste for you. This is one I was reading, one of Satchidananda Maharaj's books, wonderful books on the holy name. He has several. This is Nam, I think, Rahasya, confidential truths about the holy name. And he quotes a verse that I knew, which is from the Nam Ashtaka by Rupa Goswami. It's wonderful. I can give it to you. In fact, I can send you the whole Stavamala. And that, Haribol Naga. That's the name he told, Naga. Welcome. We're, okay, you've got a different book. We're on page, not page, but chapter 6, text number 7 now. Is it? Yeah. So we know theoretically, I mean, if anyone knows directly by realization that the holy name is the same as Krishna, let me know, because you're a realized soul. But we know that. And so we can pray to the name. Name is Krishna himself. So here's the verse that he quotes in his book. Agadamana Yashoda Nandano Nandasunu Kamala Nayana Gopi Chandra Vrindavanindra Pranata Karuna Krishna Vityaneka Swarupe Tvai Mamadataduchai Vardatam Nama Deham. Now this word Vardatam we know from Govardhana, right? It means to nourish, please increase. So what it is, he's giving us sample names there. And we know Krishna's names tell us something about his pastimes, right? Yashomati Nandana Brajabharana. By the way, we have numerous books, song books. As you may know, if I ever read, when I lead the Guru Puja, for those who are there in the morning, I like to sing that song at the end. And it's true. He says, Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa, these pure names are filled with Krishna's pastimes. So this is a wonderful way to remember Krishna's pastimes and glorify him at the same time. So anyway, this verse is made up of Krishna's names. So what are those names? Agadamana means you kill, destroy the Agasura demon. Yashoda Nandana, beloved son of Yashoda. Nandasunu, beloved son of Nanda. Nandasuna Kamala Nayana, you of the lotus eyes. Gopi Chandra, like the full moon that causes the gopis to blossom, the lotus eyes. Gopi Chandra, Vrindavanendra, you're the real Lord of Vrindavan, And then here's my favorite name. I was suggesting, because I used to live in big temples and we'd have householders and the ladies would be with child, and I would suggest this as a name. You can, Parama Karuna. You who are, no, not Pranata Karuna. Pranata Karuna, you who are merciful to the surrendered souls. Pranata Karuna. Krishna, of course. Aneka Swarupa, you have unlimited names. Tvai Mamarataduchai Vardatam Namadeya, please nourish and increase my attraction for you. You can do it. You're Krishna, you see? And actually the verse itself increases the attraction. So that's been my experience. There's so many, wonderful verses describing Krishna's pastimes and his Leela and his mercy and all these different things. And oftentimes these incredible poets, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Rupa Goswami, they create these that are just in and of themselves, even if you don't know the meaning. It sounds so wonderful, Like, I put this into a poem. I don't know if I remember the poem now. But every word begins with M. Madhuresha madhuri maya madhava vanudi matallika mugdha mama madana mohana madama dayamanaso maha maha moham. Is that cool or what? Rupa Goswami. Madhuresha madhuri maya. Oh, Lord of Mathura, you're just sweetness personified. Madhuresha madhuri maya. You're full of sweet, everything. Madhuri maya madhava. Murali Mattalika Mugdha. You're so expert at playing that flute in the way that bewilders everybody who hears it. Mama Madana Mohana Mana. My Madana Mohan, the bewilderer of Cupid. Madana Mohana Muda. Mama Madana Mohana Muda Mardaya. Please, with great joy, destroy my great illusion. Mama Madana Mohana Muda Mardaya Manaso Maha Maha Moham. That which is residing in my mind, my great illusion. Manaso Maha Maha Moham, my great illusion. Please destroy it, by your mercy. Wonderful, wonderful prayer. You see. So this helps to control the mind. You give the mind one thing. Prabhupada was on a morning walk, and he asked his, the devotees there on him, sannyasis and everyone. What is the, how did he put it? What is the most universal thing in human society? Universal attraction, you see? And a lot of devotees were saying music, but Prabhupada said, no, not music. Rhythm. Rhythm is even more universal. Every kind of music has to have some kind of rhythm, And this is to me, this is one of the most attractive things about the Sanskrit. The chanda, it's called chanda, means the different meters, And oftentimes you'll find the certain meters are used for special, whole ashtakas. Like there's one verse that I learned from the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Lord Chaitanya. As part of one of the ashtakas that begins the Stavamali, has 3 ashtakas to Lord Chaitanya. And this one is just attractive. Smita loka shokam hadachita kritam yasya padito girang tu prarambak kushala pataling pallavayati padalambak kangva panayati nahi premanavaham sadevaschaitanya kitadatatadang nakripayatu. So the last line, which is repeated in each verse, Sadevas Chaitanya Kutadatatadang Nakripayatu. When will Lord Chaitanya show me his great causeless mercy? So Smita Aloka, the smiling glance of Lord Chaitanya. Shokam Hanati Jikatam. Throughout the whole universe destroys all shoka, all lamentation. Those who can experience that glance. Just come before the deity. Smita Aloka Shokam Hanati Jikatam Yasya Padita, all around. Girangtu, and his words, Girangtu Pradambam Kushalapataling Pallavayati, cause the lotus of bhakti to grow within the heart, to expand. And then Padalam Bakangva, how could it possibly be that if someone embraces his lotus feet and becomes his servant, he will not attain pure love of God? Of course he will. When will Lord Chaitanya bestow his causeless mercy upon me? And each verse ends with that. So the idea is the prayer, it attracts the mind, the very sound. But when you know the meaning also, it's a way of controlling the mind. And of course, the best way is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Hare. But the Hare Krishna mantra is beyond the intelligence, beyond the mind. It's the greatest thing. But we also need that to purify that intelligence. And so these, reading, of course, but also the attraction of the music, and that's why Sankirtan is so powerful. The holy name is there, but it's also the dancing and the chanting and everything. So I encourage you to work on finding verses that especially attract you. And as you probably know, there are verses that Prabhupada would always quote that are good to know. especially if you're going to try to convince someone to be Krishna conscious. You can quote a verse from Krishna. All right, let's go on. Jnana Vijnana Chiptatma. That's the one we're on, right? Oh, I'm 7? Okay. Chitatmana Prashantasya Paramatma Samahitaha Shitoshna Sukadukeshu Tatamana Pamanayoho. For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Purport. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramatma, or Supersoul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi, or absorption in the Supreme. So Prabhupada so ingeniously brings in the bhakti, to practically every purport, explaining how, yes, this yoga system, you can do this, but it's more practical and easy to do it by bhakti, controlling the mind. But I always come back to this verse, which you probably heard me chant 100 times in these classes, and that is when Lord Chaitanya is beginning his teaching of the process of devotion to Sanatana Goswami. There's these 3 different stages, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And Lord Chaitanya says in those teachings that all the Vedic literature can more or less be categorized in that way, but especially the bhakti literature. So in the beginning, he's telling, who am I? He describes, in his first Sambandha. Sambandha means relationship, like the bondage, you see. And it includes understanding Krishna as the source of everything, as its creation. What is it made of? All the different elements, that's part of it. It's Sankhya. And where do we fit in as spirit souls? How did we get here? What's our relation with this world and with the other world? All of those things have to be understood. And if you understand them properly, then you'll be inspired to begin the process of devotion. So that's Abhideya. Because you want to go from Jnana to Vijnana. Jnana is, now I understand these 8 different elements, and how the ego is working in relation to the modes of nature and is creating this. I've read about that, But then have you really realized it, And so the second stage, Abhideya, means the practice so that you actually feel it. And the most clear way or easy way to feel it is you get more and more detached from Maya and more and more attached to Krishna. You see, and then the last stage is prayojana, the final goal, and that is measured by your progressive attraction to Krishna and the desire to serve Him and taking pleasure in serving and glorifying and doing like that. You see, rather than pleasure in serving and glorifying your body or your senses. You see, you're using the senses to serve. So that's a progression. So in his when he begins in the Madhya Lila, I forget exactly what chapter. He starts describing the process of devotional service. Then he chants this verse, which I read in a book containing some of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's lecture transcriptions. He attributed to Madhavendra Puri. So it goes like this, probably quoted a lot. Kama dinam katina katita palita durnideshas teshan jata mayana karuna nattapano pashantihi Utsrijaitan atayatupate sampratam labdha buddhis tvamayatak shadanamabhayam mam niyung svatmadasye. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting those hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So that higher intelligence, that's what hearing and chanting is all about, this, you see. And it also helps to try to explain it. That's why the preaching or sharing is so important. Your faith increases and your connection to Krishna increases. He likes that. He says, anyone who explains this to the devotees, and everyone is ultimately a devotee, there can be no devotee more dear to me than he. Or she. Yeah, so, that's why he says, one who's conquered the mind of super soul has already reached. Because the super soul is, the supervisor of our intelligence, right? He's the one who's enlightening us. Forget that, remember that, right? Source of forgetfulness too. So that's, and then reach and attain tranquility. So here's the peace again. How can you be tranquil even when the world is so full of so many things that are conspiring to make you untranquil, just disturbing you here and there. So the thing is, you tolerate. You can become so tolerant. If you're constantly communing, if you will, with Krishna within and without, you see, then you can tolerate so many things. As we saw Srila Prabhupada was able to do. So many setbacks, that whole thing in Bombay, and the attacks on the temple, and yet he never faltered. He was always, with Krishna saying, because you read and you understand how he comes to the rescue of devotees in extremis, in extreme situations all the time. So you have faith. The faith is important. Happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. You can imagine what a wonderful state that would be. Okay. A question? Mic here. We always give the mic to someone who's not there.
Hare Krishna. There's a saying that goes something like, if you want to master something, you learn it, you do it, and you teach it. It just got me thinking about.
That's good. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
That's a very good motto for us.
Maybe it was AA where no, I'm just kidding.
Okay. All right, one more, and then we'll have a few poems. Although we did have one already, actually. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijitendriya Yukta Ityuchate Yogi Samalostrashma Kanchanaha. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Purport. Book knowledge without realization of the Supreme Truth is useless, as is stated as follows. Atakshi Krishna namadi nabave grayam indriyai. Sevan mukhe hijivado swayam eva spodatyadaha. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-234. Notice it says beginning with the tongue. I don't think Prabhupada mentioned that in the translation here. Jivado. It's so interesting that your service begins with the tongue. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Chanting Hare Krishna and tasting prasadam. That was basically the Hare Krishna movement when Prabhupada started. Kirtan, kirtan, kirtan. We get tired, take a feast. Cooked by him. Just imagine. I always lament that I wasn't there at the beginning of this. But he trained up some pretty good cooks. There's no question about it. But this verse is okay. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. So we can just try to imagine what it's like to be so pure and realized and connected that just the chanting of Hare Krishna produces so much pleasure that you can be satisfied in any condition. That things may happen that would throw everyone else for a loop, but you can somehow go through it because you're moving along in that current of Krishna Bhakti, you see. And that's what we see with the great devotees. You know, we saw it with Srila Prabhupada personally. But just think of the, you know, the six Goswamis for a minute. How, you know, Rupa and Sanatan and Raghunath, they were both all very wealthy. They had unlimited funds. Rupa and Raghunath were the right and left hand of the king, you know, different ministers. And Raghunath Das Goswami was the only son of $1 million landowners, you know, zamindars. But they rejected it all by the influence of Lord Chaitanya. They came in touch with Lord Chaitanya and they didn't want anything else. And Raghunath became the emblem. Amongst the renounced Goswamis, he was the most renounced and detached. Eventually he was eating, every third day, a little buttermilk, and, you know, inconceivable. But he lived into his 70s and gave so much. And I loved it, you know, among the song, in the song to the six Goswamis, Vande Rupa Sanatana to go. The fourth verse is always the most attractive for me, and it describes these wealthy souls who gave it up and became six Goswamis. Tyaktva turnam ashesha mandala patishening sada tuchavat budva dina ganeshako kadunaya kopina kantashvito gopi bhavata samritabda lahari kallola magno muhur Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyagoshi Jiva Gopala Go. And it's I guess appropriate that this is Gopal Bhatta's disappearance day, so we'll honor him there. So what did it say there? The interesting thing is, this describes, you know, after they met Lord Chaitanya, what did they do? So Chaktva Turnam, immediately, they didn't say, well, we'll think about it, you know. No, the next day they were planning, how can we get free from this entanglement with the king, you know, and Sanatan got arrested, the whole thing. So Chaktva Turnam, they gave up Ashesha Mandalapati Shenim, the unlimited practically aristocracy and wealth. Rupa Goswami, when he cashed out, you know, when he went to Vrindavan, he ended up with a boatload of gold. You imagine what that would be worth today? $100 billion or something, you know. So then it describes that, what did he do with that gold? He gave half of it to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas for their, you know, maintenance. He gave a quarter of it to his relatives, probably because they expect something. You can imagine if they didn't get it. And the other quarter of it he put into the, get this now, put it in the trust, entrusted it to a trustworthy grocer. You can imagine how trustworthy that grocer was today. And then Sanatana Goswami had access to it. He was able to bribe the jailer, get out, and go to Vrindavan, you know. So what did they do? And then it's getting late. Manda Bisheni Sadat Tuchavat. It's insignificant. All of that wealth and pomp and, you know, and influence, useless. Tuchavat. Budva Dina Ganeshako, Gana Ishako, in order to help the Dina, the wretched souls like us, in other words, the conditioned souls, they sacrificed and wrote books, you know, and everything. The Karunaya, out of mercy, Kopina Kantashito, they simply wore simple loincloths, you know, gave all it to Papa. But so were they suffering because they came from this great wealth down to the poverty? No. He says, Gopi Bhavada Samatabda Hari Kallola Magno Muhur. Again and again they were diving and surfacing in the ocean of Gopi Bhavada, the greatest Amrita, rasa, of the gopis' love for Krishna. You see? So they were experiencing that at every moment. So this pomp and stuff is just an impediment. You know, they just gave that up completely. But they were the most wealthy. They're way greater than billionaires. You know, billionaires are to be pitied. So conditioned by all that wealth, you can imagine. So anyway, all right. So we have very little time. So just one verse. This you've heard before, but it's ever fresh. Bhujanga da Prachandaka, again it's a prayer. Bhujanga da Prachandaka spurata kanda chudankure nirankasha diganchala brahmina badna bringa brahme. Patanga tu hitastati vanukati rakeri priye padaspurata me mahostwaya mukunda shraddharati. You wear the best of crests, a crown of perfect peacock plumes. Your dancing glances stun the bees, meandering midst the blooms. You relish love play in a cottage by Kalindi's shore. O Krishna, may pure love for you be mine forevermore. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.